It was a cold morning in Helena, Montana, back in February of the year 2022. Snow covered the sidewalks like a thick, quiet blanket. The wind moved slow and bitter through the narrow streets. Sarah Jensen stood by the frosted kitchen window of her small, two-bedroom home, wearing the same oversized hoodie she'd worn for 3 winters in a row. At 262 pounds, Sarah had long stopped checking the scale. Not because she didn't care, but because it always hurt to see the number stare back like a punishment. Her husband, Daniel, made sure to remind her even when she didn't. "Don't forget to order your plus-size dress for the wedding next weekend," he said that morning, his voice flat, eyes glued to his phone. "Not that anyone's expecting you to look good anyway." Sarah blinked. She didn't cry. Not anymore. The words didn't cut the way they used to. Not sharply, at least. They just stacked, like bricks on her chest. She turned back to the sink and kept washing dishes. The water had gone cold, and her hands were red. In the living room, the TV played some fitness ad, all abs and smiles and promises of a better life. She turned the volume down. Later that day, while folding laundry, she overheard Daniel on the phone. He thought she couldn't hear him. "Man, I swear, being married to her is like living with a sofa. There's no fire left, no spark. Just weight. Just dead weight." That one hurt, it really did. Sarah had met Daniel in high school, back when she weighed 175 pounds, and her smile still lit up rooms. Helena was small, and back then, she believed in small-town dreams. Family, love, a cozy home. But 10 years into marriage, the dream had crumbled. Daniel had a decent job in real estate, brought in good money, and made sure everyone knew he was the provider. But what he gave in dollars, he took in dignity. At the grocery store, he walked ahead of her like he didn't know her. When friends came over, he introduced her like a distant relative. And every time she asked to go out for dinner, he'd say, "Let's not make people stare." The worst part wasn't the public shame. It was the silence, the way he never said her name anymore. Just, "Hey," or "you," like she was part of the furniture. Sarah had no career of her own. She had once dreamed of being a wellness coach, helping others reclaim their health, rebuild their confidence, but life had a way of burying dreams under laundry piles and grocery lists. She didn't want fame. She didn't even want revenge. She just wanted to feel human again. That night, while Daniel snored beside her, Sarah scrolled through an old photo album on her phone. Her younger self smiled back, strong arms, bright eyes, full of hope. That version of Sarah felt so far away. But something shifted. She whispered out loud, barely a sound, "I want my life back." There was no dramatic music, no sudden lightning strike, just that quiet voice inside her, the one Daniel had tried to silence, finally waking up. From that night on, Sarah would begin the slow climb back to herself. It wouldn't be easy, it wouldn't be quick, but it would be real. And no one, not even Daniel, was ready for what was coming. The morning after Sarah made that quiet vow to herself, the sun rose slow over Helena, casting soft orange light across the snow-covered roofs. Her house felt colder than usual, not just in temperature, but in spirit. Daniel had already left for work, leaving behind a dirty coffee cup and the faint smell of cologne he didn't wear for her anymore. She stood in front of the mirror in the hallway. She hadn't really looked at herself in months. Her body told a story of exhaustion, but her eyes still held a flicker, like an old flame trying to stay alive in the wind. "Start small," she whispered. That day, Sarah didn't go back to bed after Daniel left. She pulled on her worn-out sneakers, layered up against the Montana chill, and stepped outside. It was February 20th. The sidewalks were icy, the air sharp, But she walked anyway, just 3 blocks at first. Her legs ached, her breath turned to fog, but her spirit felt lighter than it had in years. For the first time, she wasn't walking to lose weight. She was walking to find herself. By March 2nd, Sarah was walking nearly 2 miles every morning. She downloaded a podcast about wellness and listened while she moved through the quiet streets. She even started journaling. Nothing fancy, just little notes like you matter or your values are not tied to your size. Daniel didn't notice. Or maybe he did and just didn't care. He still made comments, offhanded jabs wrapped in sarcasm. "Wow, look at you. Walking again? What's the goal this time? 10 pounds? Sarah didn't respond. Not anymore. She had learned that some people only speak to hear themselves. Instead, she focused on consistency. She made small changes to her meals, not chasing fads or starving herself, just listening to her body, fueling it with care. She swapped soda for water, late-night snacks for sleep, and bitterness for silence. The pounds came off slowly. 10 by the end of March, 17 by mid-April. By May 1st, she was down 24 pounds. But it wasn't just the number. Her face looked different. Her skin had life again. Her eyes didn't look tired all the time. People in town started noticing. The woman at the farmer's market complimented her new haircut. A teenager at the coffee shop smiled and said she looked really good in green. One evening, Daniel came home late, clearly irritated. He looked at her and asked, "Why are you smiling?" She just said, "Because I feel good." He scoffed. "Don't get ahead of yourself. You still got a long way to go, Sarah." But those words didn't sink in like they used to. She had found something deeper than approval. She was rebuilding her self-worth from the ground up. She picked up part-time work doing online health coaching for beginners, a dream she had buried years ago. She made videos from her living room talking about wellness, values, health, and the journey of self-love. Her channel didn't explode overnight, but by June, she had over 3,000 followers. Brands started reaching out. Small amounts of money started coming in. Not fortune, but freedom, a taste of prosperity. And Daniel? He barely noticed. He spent more time at work, less time at home. But that suited her fine. Her focus was shifting. On June 10th, she reached a milestone, 41 pounds down. That night, she took herself out to dinner. Alone. She wore a navy dress that hugged her curves without apology. At the restaurant, a stranger held the door open and said, "You look amazing." It wasn't flirtation. It was recognition. She felt seen. When she got home, Daniel didn't even ask where she'd been. Sarah looked around the house and realized something. This place didn't feel like hers anymore. It was full of shadows and silence and sharp memories. She started saving. By July, her coaching business had grown. More clients, more video views, more money. Not riches, but momentum. She opened a separate account, started learning about personal finance, and began planning her exit. Not just from the house, but from that version of her life. 52 pounds lighter, stronger, wiser, and nowhere near done. By the 1st of August, Helena had warmed up. The snow was long gone, replaced by dry sidewalks and golden sunlight that made everything look a little more alive. Sarah Jensen was now 57 pounds lighter. Her face had changed. Her walk had changed. Her voice even carried differently, like it no longer asked for permission to be heard. She stood in front of her bedroom mirror, trying on a tailored black blazer she had thrifted for under $20. It hugged her just right. For the first time in years, she looked like a woman in control. Her business had taken off more than she expected. People connected with her honesty. She didn't sell magic pills or weight loss secrets. She talked about values, about healing, setting boundaries, choosing health not for looks, but for survival. And that truth resonated. A wellness brand from Seattle sent her a small sponsorship, her first paid collaboration, $120 for a video about meal prep and self-care. It wasn't about the money, though she needed every dollar. It was the feeling of being valued. Her channel now had over 8,000 subscribers. She was being invited onto small podcasts. One called her a symbol of real transformation. Another said, "You're redefining what prosperity means for women who've been silenced too long." It made her tear up. Because behind the success, Sarah was still healing. Daniel hadn't changed much. If anything, he seemed more annoyed that she was doing something for herself. He never watched her videos. He rolled his eyes when she got excited about new clients or positive comments. "You really think people care what you have to say?" he muttered one night, not even looking up from his laptop. Sarah looked at him for a long time. "Yes," she said calmly. "I think they do." That was the night she decided. She sat down, pulled up her budget, and opened a new folder labeled Freedom Plan. Inside it, she mapped out every cent of her income, every possible expense, every goal. She created savings targets, rent estimates, furniture costs, even emotional boundaries she would not cross again. By mid-August, she had saved nearly $600, enough to put down a deposit on a small rental. But fate had other plans. On August 22nd, during a video call with a longtime subscriber named Grace, something unexpected happened. Grace, a retired therapist from Bozeman, had been following Sarah's journey for months. She loved Sarah's content. She loved her honesty. And more than anything, she saw her potential. "Sarah," she said gently, "I have a property, a small guest house I rarely use. It's in Helena, near Mount Helena Trail. If you're serious about starting over, it's yours. No rent for the first 6 months. Just keep making your videos. Help more women." Sarah's eyes welled up. "Are you serious?" "Completely. You're doing something meaningful. That's what wealth is. Not things, not cars, not titles. It's impact. That's prosperity." By September 3rd, Sarah had packed her things and left Daniel. No shouting, no argument, just a note on the kitchen counter. "I'm choosing health, I'm choosing peace, and I'm choosing myself." The guest house was small but beautiful. Wooden floors, big windows, a quiet porch that overlooked the hills. For the first time in her adult life, Sarah lived alone, and it felt like oxygen. She decorated the place slowly, secondhand finds and gifted plants. Every item had intention. Every corner had warmth. That month, she crossed 68 pounds lost. She made a video tour of her new space, titled From Pain to Power, My New Beginning. It reached over 25,000 views in 48 hours. The comments were full of women saying, "This gave me hope, and you helped me get out too." And somewhere deep inside, Sarah realized this wasn't just about weight. It was about reclaiming space, her voice, her worth. She lit a candle that night, sat on her porch with a cup of tea, and whispered into the wind, "This is what wealth looks like to me now. Health, peace, and the freedom to choose my own life." She didn't know that Daniel had already started watching her videos in secret, or that, soon enough, he'd be standing outside her gates with flowers in his hands. But for now, she just breathed. She was finally home. September. In Helena brought a crispness to the air that Sarah hadn't felt in years, the kind of cool breeze that whispered change, that made every deep breath feel like a reset. The leaves began turning golden, and so did her life. She had now lost 74 pounds. Her face looked sculpted. Her steps were lighter. Her laugh, which had been buried beneath years of hurt, came easier now. Her skin glowed, not because of any expensive cream, but because peace had finally found a place to live inside her. Her morning started at 6 o'clock sharp. She'd walk the Mount Helena trails with a thermos of hot lemon water, earbuds in, listening to audiobooks about healing, business, and female empowerment. She was consuming better food, better thoughts, better energy. Her online coaching business was officially profitable. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was growing. With steady monthly income and a solid client list, Sarah began dreaming bigger. On September 26th, she visited a real estate open house, a cozy modern cabin just outside Helena, tucked between pine trees with a view that could stop your heart. It was priced at just under $190,000. She wasn't ready to buy it. Not yet. But for the first time in her life, she walked through a place like that and thought, why not me? She imagined filming her wellness videos in that bright kitchen, hosting women's retreats, starting a podcast from her own office. Health, prosperity, wealth, values. They're not words for other people. They're for me too. Meanwhile, her YouTube audience crossed 34,000 subscribers. Brands were now offering four-figure deals. One campaign for a mental health app brought in $1,200. It felt unreal. Not just the money, but the recognition. People saw her, respected her, believed her voice had worth, that her story had power. She never chased attention. But she finally understood that telling her truth out loud could be someone else's survival guide. And then, Daniel reached out. It was October 3rd. He texted her late at night. I saw your video. Didn't expect to feel what I felt. Sarah stared at the screen for a long while before replying. Feel what? His answer came fast. Regret. Guilt. You look happy. Healthier. Lighter. I didn't know you could be that woman. That woman. He hadn't said her name, still didn't. But something in his words stung. She didn't reply. 2 days later, he showed up. At her new place, flowers in hand, a cheap grocery store bouquet wrapped in plastic. He wore a nice button-down, hair combed, smile forced. Sarah was walking up the drive, groceries in one hand, car keys in the other. Hey, Daniel said, taking a step forward. You look amazing. She blinked, holding her ground. What are you doing here, Daniel? I saw everything. Your videos, your growth. I messed up. I was a fool. But maybe we could talk? Sarah looked at him, really looked. He hadn't changed. He was just reacting to her glow, her strength, her wealth of self. That wasn't love. That was regret, dressed up as flowers. You had years to talk, she said quietly. You chose silence. I didn't know how bad it got, he mumbled. Yes, you did. You just didn't care. Daniel shifted his feet. I'm sorry. I believe you, she said, soft but steady. But I'm not the same woman you left sitting in a dark house, wondering why she wasn't enough. She walked past him, groceries rustling. He didn't follow, just stood there, watching her, the woman who rose from pain into power. She didn't slam the door. She didn't need to. She had already closed that chapter the moment she chose herself. And inside her home, surrounded by peace and purpose, Sarah whispered a single word. Freedom. By mid-October, Helena's skies had turned gray, and a chill hung heavy in the air. But inside Sarah's new home, warmth lived in every room. The guest house had become more than a shelter. It was her sanctuary, a space she had filled with intention, peace, and a new set of values. Each morning she lit a candle, brewed black coffee, and sat by the window journaling before her first coaching call. Her health routine was consistent, her mind focused, and her heart, for the first time in years, felt whole. She now weighed 180 pounds, a full 82 pounds down from when she started. But this journey was never about numbers. It was about reclaiming her voice, about health, not just physical, but emotional, spiritual, financial. Her audience had passed 50,000 subscribers, a community built on trust, healing, and real stories. Women from all over the country sent her emails saying, "You saved me," or "You gave me permission to dream again." On October 15th, she signed her biggest brand deal yet, a wellness platform offering $2,000 for a content series on boundaries and self-worth. It felt surreal. She deposited the money into her business account, labeled the folder Expansion. She had plans now, big ones, dreams tied not to revenge, but to prosperity. That weekend, she visited the same modern cabin near the pine woods outside Helena. It was still on the market, and this time, she brought a real estate agent. Inside, the space felt like possibility. Light poured through the tall windows. The kitchen was bright and open. A fireplace made the living room glow like home. The agent, a kind woman named Joy, smiled at Sarah. "You'd be surprised how rare it is to see someone so ready. You've done the work." Sarah smiled back. "I didn't just lose weight, I rebuilt my life. My wealth isn't just in dollars, it's in peace." Joy nodded. "That's the kind of wealth no one can take from you." Sarah submitted her offer the following day. She offered below asking, not out of fear, but strategy. She had learned how to handle money, learned her worth. 3 days later, the offer was accepted. On October 22nd, Sarah Jensen became a homeowner. She cried when she signed the papers, not because of the number on the check, but because she remembered every moment she had felt like nothing, every cruel comment, every dinner eaten in silence, every night crying in secret. And now, here she was, strong, rooted, free. She stood in her new kitchen, camera rolling, recording a video for her channel titled "From Silence to Strength, My First Home." She spoke not just of weight loss, but of identity, not just of health, but of dignity, not just of survival, but of wealth, built on truth. That night, while unpacking boxes, she found an old photo tucked between a journal and a candle holder. It was from her wedding day. She almost didn't recognize herself. She looked scared, small, like a woman trying to disappear into a dress 2 sizes too tight. She held the picture for a long time before placing it in a box marked "Past." Then she poured a glass of wine, stepped out onto her porch, and looked up at the stars. She didn't know that Daniel had driven past her old street that evening, hoping to see her. Didn't know he'd stopped outside the guest house with a second bouquet, but no courage to knock. Didn't know that he had started watching every new video she posted, memorizing the voice he once ignored. Sarah had no idea, and honestly, she didn't care, because she had built something beautiful. And it was hers. No one gave it to her. She earned it, pound by pound, choice by choice, value by value. The first snow came early that year, November 5th. Sarah woke to white dust blanketing the earth like a reset button, soft and silent. She stood barefoot in the kitchen of her new home, holding a warm mug between her palms, staring out at the trees heavy with snow. For a moment, she let herself feel everything: gratitude, relief, pride. She had built this, not just the house, but the life inside it, a life filled with purpose, peace, and finally, prosperity. That morning, she recorded a video titled "Letting Go of What No Longer Serves You." In it, she spoke about the difference between growth and guilt, about how choosing peace often means disappointing people who benefited from your silence. She didn't name Daniel. She didn't have to. By now, her audience knew the story, knew the weight of emotional neglect, the toll of living in a house where you were only half seen. Her comments section was filled with women saying, "That was my life," and "You made me believe I could start again." On November 8th, Sarah crossed 82 pounds lost. She marked it not with a celebration, but with reflection. She lit a candle, wrote a letter to her old self, the one who cried quietly in the shower, who tiptoed around a man who no longer loved her, who believed she wasn't enough. "You survived her," she wrote, "and now you're building a new world." Later that evening, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Daniel. "I saw your last video. You look incredible. Can we talk?" Sarah stared at the screen for a while. She didn't feel anger, just clarity. She replied with a single sentence. "There's nothing left to say." But Daniel didn't take that as an answer. On November 12th, he showed up again. This time, it wasn't the guest house. It was her new home, the one she had bought on her own, the one he didn't know existed until he started digging through her videos, piecing together locations. He stood at the gate in a wool coat, snow melting on his shoulders, holding a bouquet much bigger than before. This time, it was expensive, roses, lilies, carefully arranged. He waited for over 20 minutes. Sarah saw him through the window, standing in the cold, fidgeting. She didn't move. Didn't open the door, didn't offer a chance, because this wasn't a movie. This was her real life. And real life had taught her that sometimes closure isn't a conversation. It's a decision. She watched as Daniel finally turned away, flowers still in hand, headlights disappearing into the snowy road. And just like that, the final thread between them broke. That night, she recorded a raw, unfiltered video titled, "This is what healing looks like." She spoke softly. "I used to believe I needed an apology to move on. I don't anymore. My values have changed. My wealth isn't just in money. It's in boundaries. It's in health. It's in peace. That's the kind of richness no one can buy." It was her most watched video to date. Over 90,000 views in 3 days. People didn't just hear her story, they felt it. And with every new subscriber, every client booking, every dollar earned through truth, she rewrote what success looked like. It wasn't loud. It was honest. It wasn't revenge. It was redemption. She went to bed that night with a quiet heart, snowfall tapping gently on her windows, and a future wide open. The days leading up to Thanksgiving came cold and quiet in Helena. The town moved a little slower in late November, breath visible in the air, trees bare, skies heavy with snow that hadn't yet fallen. Sarah Jensen's life, though, was the opposite. Inside her new home, everything was in motion. Not rushed, but alive. Her days were full. Mornings spent in coaching calls, afternoons filming videos, evenings journaling and responding to messages from women around the world. Her business had not only stabilized, it was thriving. By November 25th, Sarah's YouTube channel passed 100,000 subscribers. She stared at the screen when the number clicked over. A quiet, trembling laugh escaped her lips. She had never chased fame. This was never about going viral. It was about values. It was about healing. And now, it was also about impact. That week, a wellness brand offered her a 5-month contract worth $10,000. $10,000! For someone who used to collect Daniel's loose change from the couch cushions just to buy groceries, that kind of money didn't just mean income. It meant independence. It meant she could fund a small retreat space, a dream she'd written about in her journal back when she still lived in that cold, silent house with a man who didn't love her. Now, she had the means to create that dream. Real wealth, Sarah had learned, wasn't about flashy cars or designer clothes. It was about peace. It was about choice. It was about having the resources to give back. On November 27th, she posted a video called "What Prosperity Really Looks Like." In it, she shared a story about going to the grocery store and paying for the woman behind her. a single mom who came up short by $14. "I didn't do it to be kind," she said on camera. "I did it because someone once did it for me. And now I can. That's prosperity." The video hit over 200,000 views in 5 days. People cried. People donated to women's shelters in her name. People called her a light in the darkness. And still, through all the growth, Sarah remained grounded. She walked every morning. She ate with care. She spoke gently to herself. She weighed 178 pounds now, and while she was proud, she no longer measured her success in pounds lost. She measured it in peace gained. She measured it in how little she thought about Daniel. But Helena's a small town, and on November 30th, she ran into him at the gas station. He looked thinner, not healthier, just worn, like a man carrying regret in his spine. He saw her before she saw him. She felt his stare before she turned. "Sarah," he said softly. She turned, calm. "Hi, Daniel." He blinked. "You look incredible. I mean, wow." She gave a small smile. "Thank you." "I've been watching your videos," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "You're doing amazing things." There was a long pause. "I was an idiot," he added. "I lost a real one." Sarah took a breath, looked him in the eyes. "I wasn't lost, Daniel. I just stopped shrinking myself to fit into your version of love." He nodded, lips pressed tight. "I'm happy for you," he said. She believed him. But it didn't matter. She didn't need his apology. She didn't need his praise. That was the thing about healing. It no longer depends on the people who hurt you. They talked for another minute, small, polite. Then she walked to her car. Calm. Whole. Done. As she drove off, she felt nothing heavy, just light. Later that night, she told the story in a live stream. She didn't name him, just said, "Sometimes the past shows up not to test you, but to show you how far you've come." Thousands watched. Thousands nodded through their screens. Because they'd felt it too. That moment where you realize you're no longer the broken version of yourself. You're the author now. And your story keeps moving forward. December rolled into Helena with a sharp wind and skies the color of steel. Snow began falling again on the morning of the 4th. Slow, steady, like a quiet reminder of all that had changed. Inside her warm cabin home, Sarah Jensen was preparing for something big. It had been exactly 10 months since her first walk around the block. Since the day she whispered to herself, "I want my life back." She now stood in her living room, hair tied in a soft bun, wearing a tailored emerald green dress and subtle gold earrings. Not for vanity, for power, for peace. She was hosting her first in-person workshop. 10 women, all from different places, all carrying their own battles, their own silence, their own shame. And all of them had flown to Helena to meet Sarah, the woman who had once been called the fat wife and now stood as a voice of wealth, health, and healing. The retreat focused on values, not diets, not appearances, but true, lasting values, emotional safety, boundaries, self-worth, rebuilding your voice after years of being muted. The fireplace crackled softly as they sat in a circle. And when it was Sarah's turn to speak, she stood slowly, looked at the women around her and said, "I spent years believing I had to shrink myself to be loved. I thought if I got smaller, quieter, easier, I'd be worthy. But the truth is, worthiness isn't earned. It's remembered." There were tears in that room, real ones, and not from pain, but from recognition, from healing. Later that evening, after the retreat ended, Sarah received a message request on her phone, a name she hadn't seen in a while. Daniel Jensen. She hesitated, then opened it. "I drove by today, saw the new place. It's beautiful. You built a life that shines. I never said it, but I was wrong. About everything. Attached was a photo. Him, outside the gate, holding flowers, again. But this time, Sarah didn't even feel the sting. She smiled. A soft, quiet smile, like someone watching a film they've already seen, but with new eyes. She didn't respond. Instead, she walked to the porch, wrapped in her thick wool shawl, and looked out at the Montana night sky. Stars blinked above like they knew her story, and she whispered to the dark, "I forgive you, but I don't need you." The next morning, she shared a new video, "The Woman I Found at the End of the Road." In it, she shared nothing about Daniel, nothing about flowers or drive-bys. Only this: "I used to believe healing was about fixing what broke, but it's not. It's about building something better, something that reflects your truth, your power, your values. That's what real prosperity is. That's what real wealth looks like." And as her voice echoed across thousands of screens, reaching homes and hearts far beyond Helena, one final sentence closed the story. "And you, yes, you deserve that kind of life too. One built on love. Real love. Starting with your own." The comments poured in. Thousands, then tens of thousands. And one comment, pinned by Sarah herself, simply read, "And you? Have you ever lived something like this? Drop it below. I'd love to hear your story."